Hello and welcome back to the Thinking Wealth podcast. This is episode number 6, and today we're going to be talking about moving into self-employment. It's something that both myself and Alex have got a lot of experience in, that transition itself, and we thought it'd be something worthwhile speaking about. It's a decision people are faced with, and it seems to be happening more and more in all lines of work, to be honest with you. So first things first, moving into self-employment. Do you want to take the lead, mate? Do you want to start us off?
No, I think just adding to what you just said, to be fair, there's always it's sort of like an unwritten rule that people tend to want to move into being their own boss and being self-employed and everything, but it comes with both pros and cons, and it ain't as easy as just, pulling that trigger, because obviously there are benefits to self-employment. There's also pitfalls to self-employment as well.
Yeah, so, absolutely, yeah.
I don't think there's ever a right time to move into it, but as we've said there at the beginning, it's like I don't know if it's a British thing or what, but people just want to work for themselves now, in particular, don't they?
I think that seems to be like the new approach. I think the old approach, maybe a couple of generations ago, was the opposite. I think that was, do well at school, college, university, get a decent job, and work all your life for your pension come the end. So I suppose the world's changed, society's changing as well. The way that we look at work and the value that we put against it. That might mean that more people are considering going self-employed. The flexibility that it brings, that was my main attraction to it.
And in relation to personal finance, you've got obviously more responsibility when you're looking after your own well-being, financial well-being. You got to take into consideration here. You say just expecting some boss to pay you the money, and then you can sort of put certain amount of money that you're receiving into your portfolio or whatever every month. When it's more uncertain, you've got to be more, strict with yourself, more disciplined, organised, And a lot of people don't like that. They don't want to take responsibility for that. So that's just, I think, it's one of the pitfalls that we've got here for moving into self-employment. Although I would suggest that it's sort of a step up, but not better than, but like a step up in terms of self-responsibility, self-discipline.
What it does for you as a person.
Then very often, obviously, that's a benefit as a human being. You become more wholesome and everything. You have to take more responsibility, as we've said. One of the pitfalls is the same thing. If people aren't willing to take responsibility for themselves and, their own financial intelligence, then maybe they're better off not moving into self-employment.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I think the main reason I decided to move on, it was at a time where I had still a young family, which I still have now, really, and it was the potential of earning better money in less time, which straight away is always a great position to be in. I would value my time probably more than anything, so the opportunity to potentially earn the same as or more in less time for me was a bit of a no-brainer. It gave me that sort of life balance which everyone's trying to strive for. When
did you think it was a good time for you? Like, what happened in your life to make that happen?
Well, I was in full-time work going back 5 days a week. This would have been 40 hours a week. So back in 2000, I think it was the end of 2017, maybe the start of 2018. That was the last time I was working a full-time job. I then had the opportunity within the place where I was working at the time to drop a day, which again I think was just another step along the path to me eventually making the decision to go self-employed. So I did that, I think, for another 6 months or so, and then I just decided that another opportunity arose, obviously, for this to come about. I got offered more money to do pretty much the same job, same role, somewhere else, working 3 days a week. I suppose it wasn't so much a point in time, it was more a set of circumstances that came about that basically made me make that decision and made it easier for me to make that decision.
Because I don't think there is a right time for people. It's down to their own personal development, I think. Where do they want to be and where are they right now? Because ambitious people, you tend to find, are willing to take those risks. People who are maybe less ambitious are more happy to just...
Yeah, I think it can... And people obviously will have their own opinion on this, but that can be a bit of an illusion, can't it? It being a risk, and you're more secure in an employed role. Well, I think if the last 18 months rather is anything to go by, you could argue for and against that opinion. I mean, you could say, oh yeah, but you've been protected with the furlough scheme. But I suppose the flip side of that is, well, it's not actually the company that's been keeping you there; it's been the government.
Yeah.
So is that secure? Because as soon as the government stopped that, especially if the business has been able to operate without you for so long, you could argue that it's not. It's the complete opposite of security. Because when that money stops, the furlough stops, then where does that leave you as an employee within a business?
I agree. And the world's moving, as you say, the last 18 months, the world's just completely radically changed. There's not even a comparison to what it was before in terms of the workplace. There's going to be like jobs that can be systemized.
Easy for you to say, mate.
Systemized. Jobs that can be systemized, they're just going to be. And they're just... Capitalism generally finds the cheapest way to create the best product.
Quickest, yeah.
And, you got people at Mackey's. I read the other day in a newspaper article that McDonald's are now testing robots to make the burgers and everything, because in the US they were wanting to put the minimum wage to $15. And McDonald's was saying, well, if you're going to do that, we're not going to employ anyone then, because it's going to affect our bottom line, so we're just going to make robots do it.
Yeah, and I was going to say, this does fall in line with some other sort of global agendas, potentially, so to speak, like AI, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence, people who aren't real basically taking over in some capacity, some way or another. The most obvious example, you've just given one there, but like factory work, for example, people working within a factory setting. I guess the initial outlay to get one of these robots or machines or whatever it is that could potentially take over your role would potentially be expensive, but after that, there's no cost, is there? Once that's paid off, there's no labour costs, no responsibility for looking after somebody employed, no pension, no hassle, less HR. You can see why it's attractive, to these big organisations, can't you? Like an Amazon, for example.
Why wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they? And they'd probably say, well, especially with universal basic income that people are shouting about right now, that's been trialled in a few countries.
Wales, I think, I read.
Yeah. I think one of the Scandinavian nations have already trialled it, and I think that's the future. Are there going to be enough jobs for people? I don't think there will. Nothing that can be repeated. It's just a repetitive job. They'll just get a robot to do it, won't they?
Yeah.
And therefore, so when going back to this, self-employment and employment, are there any safe jobs anymore? I think you might in technology and things that are moving forward, but we've written here on our notes like industrial age thinking. That's coming to an end now. We're in the digital, we're in the information age, and as that we come into that, whether people like it or not, jobs are going, or at least they're moving.
Yeah.
And the jobs that were needed in the industrial age, which is mainly to do with the body and doing things with the body, can now be replaced with technology. Like even the human brain, some of these AI is much more effective than the human brain. I think they did had a chess match with the world champion. A robot did.
Yeah, I saw that.
And the robot just smashed him out the park.
Yeah. And if it's the same video that I watched, they put a lot of chess games or scenarios in front of this robot, who hadn't had any experience of chess at all prior, and they just ran so many sort of games or scenarios, like I say, past this robot, to the point where you just can't beat it.
No.
And it just gets better, and it gets better quicker as well. Efficiency again.
So what do you think, in terms of self-employment, what would help people make the choice and the decision to come out of employment into self-employment? What would you suggest would assist in that process?
Maybe just taking a step back and, really taking a step back and thinking about what's important to you as the individual. And I suppose to add a bit more meat on the bone there, I suppose you could argue that somebody working 5 or even 6, sometimes even 7 days a week for some people, where's their work-life balance, family, time spent with family, if you've got young children, for example. I think, that's probably where I would start, or if I was speaking to somebody considering this now, it would be sit down, take a step back and probably think about that. What do you want to prioritise? Where do you want to spend your time? Because we really are, like you've just mentioned, we are moving away from the sort of traditional thinking of, your full-time work 9 to 5 until the age of 65 as it is at the moment, or is it even 66 now, the age of retirement? It's not going to even be that for us, is it?
No.
I'd be very surprised if there's even a pension scheme when we get to that age. I'd be very surprised.
Not in the way it is today. They might have something.
Something to replace it. So I suppose that's what I would say, mate, Try and sit down, strip it all back and,
And in terms of...
write down, prioritise.
In terms of personal finance methods, what would you suggest?
I suppose this is it's in line with, what we're doing here at Thinking Wealth. When you take this step, you do become more... you become totally responsible for your finances, and that then kicks in obviously investing in other income streams. So my first experience of this was property, and that was back when I was full-time employed. That was back in 2012. But I've gone self-employed about 3 years ago. Since then I've been able to prioritise more time into other investments, cryptos, precious metals, property, for example. I think
it's important here as well. Like, we aren't rich.
No.
I suppose it depends how you're defining that, but compared to probably 95% of the world, we probably are, to be fair. But in terms of we're not multi-millionaires here. We're like learning and growing as you guys are learning and growing as well. This is like a movement rather than like us telling you something. This is like ideas that we've come across and that you can share with us and things like that. Like when we mention multiple income streams there's so many that you can now, they call it side hustles, don't they, the Americans in particular, but you can we were speaking to a guy earlier in another place we do some work, and he was talking about getting stuff from imported, and he just sells it on Amazon as a side business to his property business. And obviously that takes time, it takes a bit of skills and knowledge, but in my opinion, anybody can create £1,000 a month from just a little, gut up car boots on a Sunday and sell all your rubbish. Do you know what I mean? And then you can invest that into income generating assets.
Yeah. And
if you think like in a 10-year time scale rather than I need to get this done in 3 months, that's when you start seeing the results on compounded over time.
Yeah, no, that's a great way of putting it,
because real estate,
getting political, but it's always, I suppose it's not political, is it? It's just human psychology, isn't it? And then we form our own opinion and biases around that makes things maybe political and whatever.
Definitely.
But I've said it on a previous podcast episode. You've got certain selection of people in society that are saying what a terrible time we're in and so on and so forth. But I think the opposite, like Alex has just said, in a lot of ways, there's never been a better time. There's so much opportunity out there. There's so many different ways to earn income in a multiple of different ways, whether that's investing, whether you're using your time for money in a job, Amazon selling on the side. My other half does, she's really into sort of crafts, and she doesn't make a fortune, but she's sort of combining her hobby with a little bit of cash on the side. It seems to be more and more people doing this. And I like that. Some may lay that up as, people are having to work 2 or 3 jobs to support, do you know what I mean? That political stance of, the work that's out there doesn't pay for a standard lifestyle that we should be able to lead in this country. I don't think it's that. I think it's people just getting more in line with what they enjoy doing, I think.
Yeah.
And, I think that's, again, self-employment gives you that flexibility to do those things.
Passion to profit.
Well, yeah, that's a way of putting it.
Trying to turn passion into something you can make a bit of money from.
Yeah.
And another thing is, like with self-employment, it hasn't got to be a full-time self-employment. You can be employed, start something on the side, and you never know where that'll end up going, mate. If you just start selling things on eBay, you buy a few things, you go onto eBay, you sell them, you might turn 500 quid in a week and go, flipping it.
There's something in this.
There's something in this, and then you take more and more, you put more energy into it, and it just scales up. Sometimes not having a plan is the best thing you can do, I think, because although it goes against a lot of personal development, let's call it knowledge, advice, I think plans get in the way of life sometimes, and you try and stick to a plan, and when life's presenting, whatever you want to call that, it's presenting itself something to you, and when you've got that niche plan, you don't want to ever go outside of it, you're missing opportunity.
Yeah. You become tunnel vision with things, don't you?
But the opposite is also true. If you're not focused on something, then you're not putting the energy into it, and so the opposite is also true. But I think there's a fine balance, there.
Yeah, to strike. Yeah, absolutely.
So, what do you think is a pitfall of self-employment?
I said earlier, didn't I, when we were discussing the podcast? I think the only thing that, personally, I would put above self-employment in terms of being employed in a job, a 9-to-5 job, would be paid holiday. That's the only thing that self-employed people, I think, miss. Because we've had the discussion about, that's the classic that gets thrown at you. Yeah, but when you're employed, you're secure, and we've already discussed, are we? Are you really that secure in your role? I don't think so. Plus, you've got time to do what you want. At the moment I'm working sort of 2, 3, 4 days a week doing my surveying, which is sort of my background, my trade, as you were. And I spend the other time of the week doing the things I enjoy on our business, on other businesses. That's how I choose to spend my time. I wouldn't have that luxury if I was employed, and that in itself far outweighs being employed for me personally. Yeah,
that's right. I think one of the self-employment is sort of once again, it's only a perceived step up from employment in some people's eyes, but I think there's also perceived levels above that as well, like being an investor and a business owner, which you get paid whether you work or not. Self-employment to me is you work and get paid for the work you're doing. So therefore, if you don't work, you don't get paid, which is when you go on holiday, you're not getting paid.
Yeah.
But a business owner is the business runs whether you're there or not.
Yeah.
So
that's the test, isn't it?
It's a different psychological... Well, it's more technical, actually. Like, you have to put the systems in place to make sure that cash flow's coming in whether you're there or not.
But from me, I think I touched on it, maybe didn't explain it as well as I could have done, but being self-employed gives you more opportunity, I believe, in terms of time, to look at other income streams.
Of course, yeah. You got more time, yeah.
Because I think what you were getting at there, you can be self-employed, but you're basically employed.
Well, most people are.
Yeah.
To yourself.
Yeah, and that's the only change. Yeah. Instead of being under the umbrella of a company or whatever, they're just paying you direct.
In fact, you probably do more hours for less money. You're just accountable to yourself, which is once again sometimes a bad thing, because you don't hold yourself to account as much as someone else will hold you to account.
Maybe, yeah.
Which is why coaches and stuff are good, because they say, right, by the next time you see me, I want you to have done this, otherwise don't come back, or something like that, and that's good in my opinion.
What about benefits of self-employment?
Personal development is the main one.
Touched on this, haven't we? Yeah, personal development.
Yeah. Becoming not a better person, but like ambitious and drive and serving the world, I suppose. If you've got they call it a mission, it's horrible, but if you've got a mission to serve the world in whatever way you see fit, as uniquely as you can, like, you're not going to do that by, generally speaking, as a whole, you're not going to do that by working in an office or generally, it's very difficult to do that. If you want to give, I don't know, a couple of million to charity when you die, you're probably not going to do that unless you're working for Facebook or high up at a bank or something.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas self-employment, it's sort of a limitless up.
Yeah.
There's a limited down because you can always pull the plug and get back into job.
Yeah.
But there's an unlimited.
That's what you've just said there is exactly what I've said to people that have spoken to me about this since I've gone self-employed. Well, what happens if the work dries up? Obviously that's not good.
Yeah.
But I've got other stuff happening, This time's allowed us to set up this business, for example, and other things that I've got going on. So I wouldn't have had that opportunity or time to do that if I was employed. Or I would have, but it would have took a lot longer. Yeah. We've all got the same 24 hours in a day, haven't we? And we've got to make the most of it, as much of it as we want to make out of it, haven't we?
Exactly. And one of the things that, it's maybe a bit more in depth, but the government actually give you benefits of doing this.
Yeah.
They give you the benefits of taking risks. So you can always look at like tax legislation for what the government want you to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
You go into self-employment, you can write off all your expenses. You're in employment, everything straight away is off. By the time you've received your money, everything's been took off. Self-employment, you make all your money, then you pay your tax. Do you know what I mean? So there's benefits to it.
Yeah, that's a benefit, 100%.
The bigger your business goes, the more people you employ, the more benefits there is.
Yeah.
Amazon pay very little tax and they get away with it.
Yeah.
Why? Because they're so big, they're pumping that much money into the economy, they're serving that many people. They can do what the fuck they want, basically.
Yeah, in a nutshell.
It's just a reality, isn't it?
Yeah.
And if we don't like it, I'm sure there'd be more people moaning that Amazon weren't here than people moan about Amazon not paying tax. I don't care that they don't pay tax. I'd rather have Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And people moaning about it are usually the first ones on Amazon Prime. So,
yeah,
that's just once again, is that responsibility for taking control of your own life. I think, does it boil down to that at the end of the day? Because it's simply not. It can't happen by being reliant on a paycheck, can it? You can't be in control of your own well-being if you're at the mercy of someone saying, "I'm sacking you tomorrow."
Yeah.
It's just impossible, isn't it?
I think we've around about said this, but it's also it's a self-worth thing as well. People not thinking that they can.
Yeah. Conditioned to be small.
How can I be self-employed? How could I possibly do that? And you can. In most lines of work. A good friend of mine spoke to me about it when he was considering it. It's probably going back 2 years ago now. And he did it. He's a mortgage broker. And he did all his, I think it's the CMAP, their qualification, isn't it? Yeah. He did all that in his own time. Went away from work, took holiday, did it all in his own time, took the leap, went self-employed, and he's not looked back. He's doing fantastically well now. That's proof in itself. Sometimes you've got to just make that big decision and know in the background, which is what I said to him, if it doesn't work out, mate, you've got the experience that you need to just go and get another job exactly like the job that you've just left.
Yeah.
So there's no reason really not to give it a chance if you are considering that. And he's done really well. The mortgage advisor example, instead of just getting a flat 30 grand a year or whatever it was, doing multiple applications for whatever company he was working for, he now gets a cut of the fees. Now, obviously, the company that he was working for were taking all the fees before. He's getting the money he should have been getting.
Yeah, and he just
for all the work he was doing before, and now he's getting paid for it properly.
Good.
And yeah, you can only take your hat off to people like that. Yeah. And all he's done is made a big decision and gone with it. Fair play.
Yeah. So, the risks. What risks are there? Do you think?
Of going self-employed.
Yeah. You got your work drying up.
Yeah.
Different economy changes in the economy that affect you. Different legislation, heavy regulation.
But I suppose you can also. I know we're trying to talk about the pitfalls here, but you can, in a lot of cases, you can reverse those pitfalls or supposed negatives into benefits. Now, what I mean by that is, like, for my experience, the job that I do would on average be somewhere between a 40 and 50 grand a year a job, then a car, then holiday, a pension. You're talking like 70, 80 grand's worth of a package there.
Definitely, man.
And if you're self-employed, they haven't got to worry about your pension. They haven't got to give you a car.
No.
They haven't got to pay your holiday. So it actually can work. That can actually work in a positive fashion as well.
Yeah.
You know, companies not having to go out and, you know, employ somebody directly. No, we'll take on a subby to do that because we can get them in potentially quicker. They know the industry and they can get going. We haven't got to train them because they know the industry and they can get moving straight away. So you can usually reverse some of these supposed negatives, pitfalls of self-employment, to be honest, like I just did there. Yeah, when work dries up, I suppose, there's always a risk of that. But if work dries up when you're employed...
That's it.
You know, there's still the chance that a company could get rid of somebody, isn't there?
I think
that's just how it is, isn't it?
In the property industry, there was a big change in legislation a few years ago about the tax, where you can't offset your interest against your on your mortgages off your tax bill. I mean, that's a joke. No other industry in the world does that happen. Like your interest, you offset that against your tax bill. And in property, if you're self-employed, you can't. So everyone moved everything into limited companies. So things like that, you're at the risk of legislation, but you just adapt. It might cost you a few quid, but you just adapt to what's going on, don't you? That's what we've had to do.
Well, overnight, that would have massively affected people, wouldn't it?
Well, they scaled it in over a couple of years, didn't they?
Yeah.
But that was it. Things like that, you know, you cared nothing about it in the crypto markets. You know, if you're self-employed, you're looking for other income streams, and you've got, I don't know, 30, 40 grand in the crypto markets, earning, I don't know, 6-7% a year on them. And then your government says, right, cryptos are banned. And if we find out you're having them, your HMRC are going to come and clamp down on you or something. But, you know, you can't live your life wondering what's going to happen. You've just got to be what is. And just deal with that, ain't you? And react to that and be proactive, you know, to try and make something good for yourself. Yeah, I think that's self-employment. That's it, mate, for me. I don't know, is there anything you'd like to add? That's nearly half hour.
No, I think that... I just thought it was worth a conversation because it's a lot of... It's what a lot of people go through, isn't it? That conflict of maybe going self-employed, being your own boss, like you said. So yeah, I hope that's been worthwhile. I enjoyed speaking about it.
Before we shut down, do you think that it's a good idea for people to be maybe making, let's say, 130% of the normal income on a side business on top of their employment before they leave? So, for example, if they're making 40 grand a year in employment, let's say, I can't remember to work it out, but let's just say 50 grand in self-employment income before they leave their 40 grand.
Do I think that's how people should approach it?
Do you think it's a good idea?
I think it's a great idea. I wouldn't say it's realistic.
No.
I
think that's doable. Put a bit of energy over a couple of years to get it there, but you could do that, I think.
Yeah, I suppose with enough time, most things are possible, aren't they? But I think where I thought you were going with that is that shouldn't stop you from making that decision, though. Because I think that's where people get... with these big decisions, like, oh, when I've ticked this box, I'll then make that decision.
Yeah.
But like you've already said in this episode, life happens. You know, you can set out a plan and something can happen in your life and that goes to shit.
Mike Tyson said it, yeah. Everyone's got a plan till they get punched in the face.
There you go. So yeah, I suppose it depends what it is. You know, your background experience, if you're capable of doing what you've just said, brilliant, and in a short space of time, even better. But I wouldn't let that stop you from having a go and just pulling the trigger and, you know, taking the plunge and going self-employed, because it's never the perfect time, is it?
No, it ain't, and it's a very personal decision based on your own circumstances. It ain't a yes or no thing. It's very grey. I don't think, like, if you haven't got any...
I'm not really like that either, to be honest. You know, people have, like, from the age of 18, they've decided at this age they're getting married, at this age they're having kids, at this age we're going to have a house, it's just not life. It's not reality.
Nah.
You can do your best to sort of make it that way, but as I've just said, life happens, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So there you go.
Cool. All right, so Thinking Wealth podcast 5 or 6 or 7, I don't know where we are.
6, I think that was.
Check out YouTube, subscribe, download the podcast on all major podcasting platforms. www.thinkingwealth.co.uk/subscribe. We're currently in pre-launch. We're loading loads of content onto the investment platform right now as we speak. Mastering your personal finances, Thinking Wealth. We'll see you in the next one.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.